So where are estuaries located? These enclosed bodies of water where fresh and saltwater meet are found all over the world. This is because the formation of an estuary is not dependent on temperature of a given area, but instead only on an area where river valleys meet rising sea levels. Of the 32 largest cities in the world, 22 of them are located near an estuary.
Estuaries are found all across the globe, so the temperatures and climate for each estuary varies. The key component of estuaries is that most only have two seasons, dry season and wet season, or spring and summer. Spring often provides more rainfall to an estuary, which causes excess debris and increased stirring of rich nutrients. Summer provides heat and dry spells that cause parts of estuaries to become still and stagnant, creating low oxygen content for the ecosystem. For estuaries located in northern parts of the world, winter occurs, which causes ice sheets that can gouge invertebrates off of rocks, as well as freeze and kill certain fish populations living in the estuary.
Estuaries are booming with marine life. Animals like snook, trout, mullet, and redfish all rely on estuaries year-round to support their necessities to live. Fish like salmon rely on estuaries as a food source when traveling from saltwater to freshwater. Birds use estuaries as a food source and rely on the various types of fish to obtain their nutrients.
While the importance of phytoplankton for food and nutrients is extremely high, the primary source of food in an estuary is still detritus, which is disintegrated organic matter from plant material. Despite estuaries' great biodiversity, there are still challenges that organisms face within an estuary. The constant fluctuation of salinity levels within an estuary can cause strain on certain organisms, as they find it hard to adapt to both high and low levels of salt within their ecosystem. This is why the species that flourish in an estuary are so special. They are able to adapt to multiple types of living conditions. The organisms that live outside of the water vary on where the estuary is located. Animals from black bears to otters and even raccoons can call the land surrounding an estuary home. The vegetation in a given area of an estuary depends on the soil and water salinity in that area. For instance, mangroves have multiple types of species in an estuary that all require a certain level of salinity to flourish. This is why mangroves are found all along the border of an estuary and leading into rivers and oceans. The plants most commonly found near the coast capable of living in higher salt concentrated areas are smooth cordgrass, which is most important for the organic material it provides after decomposition, and seagrass, which is the most common underwater plant in estuaries. This is where sediment builds up in the seagrass beds, which makes it a very important plant for smaller organisms who feed on detritus. Vegetation within estuaries must be resistant to factors other than just salinity levels. They also must cope with strong currents and storm waves, varying exposure to sunlight and wind, and low oxygen levels in muddy soil. Overall, the vegetation present in estuaries is both impressive and unique.
Estuaries are full of decaying plants and dead animals. When the animals and plants die, the nutrients is absorbed into the soil. This makes the soil of estuaries rich in nutrients. Because the soil is so rich, lots of different plants grow in estuaries. The plants attract lots of different animals to the estuary, and those animals attract other animals to the estuary. It is the ongoing cycle of animal and plant life that keeps the soil quality so high in estuaries. There are 4 different types of water circulation that take place in estuaries. The first of these circulations is called a salt wedge. This is where the freshwater input is much higher than the saltwater input. This results in lower salinity levels, which we know has a big effect on the organisms, especially the vegetation inside an estuary. A good example of this is the Mississippi River. The second type of water circulation is partially mixed. What happens here is the river input becomes less than the marine input. When this occurs, the waters mix horizontally rather than vertically. When this happens, the salinity of the water varies within the estuary's water levels, leading to a stratified condition of the estuary. A good example of this type of circulation is the Chesapeake Bay. A well-mixed circulation is where the tidal forces from the ocean are so strong that it causes an intense mixing effect within each vertical level of the estuary's waters. This leads to the salinity level of the estuary to be the same throughout the entire estuary. In addition, the freshwater and saltwater boundary is eliminated. An example of a well-mixed estuary is the Delaware Bay. The last form of water circulation in estuaries are inverse circulations. Within inverse water circulations, the climate is usually very dry, so the precipitation levels are far greater than the freshwater inputs. This leads to a forceful form of mixing salt and freshwater. At the boundary where the salt and freshwater meet, the two are pushed downward to the floor of the estuary where they spread along the bottom and mix together. These estuaries are far less frequent, but the largest one of its type is the Spencer Gulf in South Australia.